Securing Justice for the murder of George Floyd. It could have just been called Chief Rondo's story. Why'd you put that up there?
The events of May 25th, 2020 undoubtedly define who I am as a leader. And if people didn't know me or knew of me in those times, what occurred on May 25th, 2020 is ultimately what history is going to have the final footnote in terms of my legacy. And so it was important to make sure that that's where we came back to, because it was the most significant policing incident in modern American history. And it was so important that it was about securing justice. While his murder happened at the hands of someone who wore the same uniform as I did, that doesn't mean that we walk away from that. Our goal should be always trying to secure justice for those people who are victims.
As night fell on May 25th, 2020, the public information officer for Minneapolis Police was at 38th and Chicago and read the following statement. This is just part of it. He said officers were able to get a suspect into handcuffs and noted he appeared to be suffering a medical distress. Officers called for an ambulance. He was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center by ambulance, where he died a short time later. Is that what happened to George Floyd?
No. So clearly, when these scenes are taking place real time, there's a lot of bits and pieces of information that are coming through. The public information officer's job is to try to get accurate information in a timely way, and we need to put that out to the community. However, that information that was put out was, of course, provided by those responsible. So
provided by Chauvin, King, Lane, and Tao.
There's brief statements that they have to make, public safety statements, to basically give leadership an idea and a sense of what occurred. We have a critical incident. That's what we term it within the organization. So the public information officer has to assume and rely upon the fact that that's truthful and accurate information that they're getting. Once that came to be false, I took it upon myself to make sure that I was vetting every bit of information that was coming through, and I would be the one to then start putting out information or talking face-to-face with our community members to make sure that they had reliable, verifiable information. So that was a mistake. That certainly eroded some of the trust. But we had to move forward, but I made sure in moving forward that we were getting factual information.
So that statement given by Elder that night was given because the officers there, one of them being Derek Chauvin, who had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, they didn't tell John Elder that part? They just said he had a medical incident?
They're not going to tell the public information officer directly, but there are supervisors and others who that information has to be shared with, and that's who in turn would give it to our public information officer. So that's where we didn't get the accurate information that night.
From the officers?
That's correct.
So that's around 8 o'clock when George Floyd dies, is murdered. Hours later, you're in your office, and that's in this book. Tell me how you come to find out that George Floyd didn't just die of a medical incident.
So as this critical incident process is played out, and really everyone now at this time has gone home, I'm still up in my office alone in City Hall, and I'm making some last minute phone calls. I'm notifying my boss, the mayor. And then it was around midnight, as I mentioned in my book, that I get probably the most important call that I could have received in my 30 plus years as chief.
At midnight, you get a call.
I get a call from a community activist, Miss Nikema, and she didn't have to call me, but she did. And she proceeds to tell me basically inquire, Chief, have you seen the video of one of your officers choking the life out of this man at the corner of 38th and Chicago? Now, again, I knew we had a death that occurred out there that at this time was a medical related death, because that's the information that we initially received. But she said, I'm going to send you this video. And within a minute, she sends me what has now become the video that the world has come to know, the bystander video by Miss Darnella Frazier. And so that was the moment that I actually saw his murder.
You watched the video on your phone?
That's correct.
What do you see?
It was gut-wrenching. I'll tell you what I don't see. I don't see humanity. I don't see a active sense of duty to care for an individual who's in our custody. What I don't see is I don't see a sense of urgency to help someone in distress. What I don't see is an officer taking bystanders pleading for help to help this man who's on the pavement. I don't see that. And what I do see is a sense of callousness, a sense of almost desensitization to someone crying out in distress, in pain. That's what I did not see. What I also saw after watching that video, Jana, is that I saw that it was going to change the MPD, Minneapolis, and to some extent, our country when they woke up in the morning and that video goes viral. That's what I saw.
You knew that when you saw it?
I did. I didn't know to the extent it ultimately was going to have, certainly to our city and on the nation, but I saw that.
Did you make a decision when you saw the video?
Absolutely.
What was that?
Anyone who wore that uniform, who was out there, and saw another individual's life as disposable, had forfeited their right to serve on the Minneapolis Police Department.
You decided while watching it you would fire all of them?
Absolutely.
You didn't call the mayor and ask permission?
No. Matter of fact, it wasn't until the following morning that I informed the mayor of that decision.
So that is May 26, 2020, early in the morning. You fire them and you call it murder.
Yes. I think that particularly as we're looking at how our nation is today, and it seems as though there's a lot of chaos and uncertainty, it's important for leaders to just be honest and frank and speak truth, even if it means we must stand alone. But my eyes did not deceive me. What I saw in that video, and I believe the majority of Americans who watch that video would see that a man who was ultimately compliant and non-resistant, he was killed. And so that's what I saw, and that's what I called it.
At that point, you take pretty bold action by firing them. The other three, not just Chauvin. Why fire them right out of the gate? Because
they also violated something that is very paramount to the duty and the oath, the promise that we make with our those that we serve, and that is you have a duty to intervene, to stand by and allow someone to kill and not treat another person with humanity. You're complicit in it. There's no separation of your involvement in that. And so And we all have to, who wear this uniform, we all take on that promise. And so standing by and witnessing a murder occur, and then the initial information you give is that it was something totally different, that's a problem. And as leader of the organization, I've got to speak to that. And so that's what I did.
After you speak to the press that morning and the world is little by little seeing the video on their social media feeds, something else begins to happen. And that is the uprising of the people.
Yes.
There were protests that night downtown. And you said you expected that, right?
Yes. Yes.
Did you expect it to go as long as it did and get to the places it got?
So I expected the protests to build. What I was also dealing with, Jana, were these other different forces at play, these other different dynamics. So one of the things that I mentioned in the book too is that from some of our city leaders, I was also expecting sort of a unified call for peace and calm. That did not occur. There were different messaging coming out internally from union leadership that is influential. And that did not help the situation. There were, again, communities who were also picking up information that there were other people coming into our city during that time that were not about the motive of peaceful protests and demonstrations, but actually hijacking his murder and basically pouring kerosene on a flame that was going. And so there were all of these things sort of going on. I expected it to grow, but certainly not in the size, scale, and the quickness that it did.
Union leadership was Lieutenant Bob Kroll. He had sent out a statement to the members of the union, so police officers after George Floyd's murder, saying we must review all video before rushing to judgment.
That was probably more damning than any statement he could have made. You juxtapose that statement to then the head of the largest police union out in NYPD, Mr. Patrick Lynch's statement, and his statement was totally just the opposite. His statement was a declaration that the men and women of the NYPD would not condone the actions of Officer Derek Chauvin, that we're out here every day trying to do our best to serve our community. What he did was wrong, unequivocally. He should be held accountable, full stop, and that we need our communities to work with us so that we can keep our communities safe. That was a statement from the NYPD president. Had we had that, not to say that that would have appeased protesters and demonstrations, but again, if you know the history, that did not help us at all.
Did you call him and tell him that this hurts?
Yes, I did.
What did he say?
It wasn't a priority for him. It wasn't something that his conscience really wanted him to, I believe, to deal with. He felt, I believe, at that time that the most important contract was that of the union. I tried to remind him that the most important contract that we take as officers is when we raise our right hand is the contract, that promise with our community. And so he took one path. History will ultimately judge him for that. I had to take another path because I needed our officers and our department to be on the right side of history.
So we get into Tuesday. The crowds are getting bigger on that very first night, and you authorize the use of pepper spray to drive back crowds near the 3rd Precinct.
That's correct.
Do you stand by that decision?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We get through Tuesday night,
Yes.
May 27th, Wednesday. Now, as you allude to, the crowds outside the 3rd Precinct and Lake Street number in the thousands. Stores are being looted, set on fire. There's property damage. In all, as you note, 1,500 more than in the city's damaged or destroyed during what happened those few days. So on that Wednesday, you're seeing all this and you decide to do what?
So, as you mentioned, and as I stated in my book, key things are happening right now on that Wednesday. As I'm in my squad car, I'm listening to the radio. I receive dispatch saying that the workers in Target to my right are barricading themselves because the store is being looted.
What time of day is that?
This is probably, I would probably want to say about 8 o'clock p.m.
So it's
evening.
dark-ish.
Yep. And then right after that, she says, and she didn't have to tell me because I could smell the burning rubber from the AutoZone in flames, engulfed in flames now. And then she proceeds to say that Minnehaha Liquors is looted, and I see individuals on top of the roof hurling Molotov cocktails that are shattering in flames on the front steps of the 3rd Precinct.
By Wednesday night, why don't we have the National Guard?
Wednesday night, we had mutual aid, but at that time, there was no call out for the National Guard at that day. No, at that time.
There were some instances where officers treated press very poorly and
Yes.
people very poorly.
Yes. One of the things that you realize in the moment when you have such a crisis in play is you have to hope. And it starts at the top with leadership providing the right message, but you have to hope that frontline supervisors are remembering to honor that oath to treat people just because you are authorized to use pepper spray or munitions. There's still rules of engagement to do that. That's just not wantonly. You start doing that indiscriminately. And so absolutely, I was surprised at some of the reports that came out of press, journalists, and civilians who were, that type of force was used upon them. It was a violation of our policy.
Surprised or angry?
I was both. Crisis usually reveals character. It revealed a lot about some of the folks out there that day who were involved in those excessive uses of force. Yeah.
Thursday, May 28th. You were in your car on that night near the 3rd. Tell me about that night.
So we had a command post that had been set up a day or two before, and my assistant chief was up there managing that. I'm a product of Minneapolis, born and raised in Minneapolis. I also know that in the midst of this crisis that was unprecedented, there was no playbook for this. I had to be out there. I had to be out there seeing what our neighborhoods were looking like, what our communities were experiencing. And so that Thursday evening, I'm parked about a block and a half south, looking directly at the 3rd Precinct and seeing the buildings of the Target to my right, AutoZone to my left, Minnehaha Liquor just sort of adjacent right across from the 3rd Precinct. So I'm out there monitoring the situation.
We had a couple of sources tell us early that day, that Thursday, that the mayor wanted to give up the 3rd Precinct as a peace offering.
Absolutely false. Unequivocally false. Nothing ever was ever said. There was never any discussion whatsoever of doing such a thing.
No predetermined that the 3rd was going to go.
Absolutely not. That is, unfortunately, that is so false, and that's also very damaging.
Mm-hmm.
It would not have made any sense to even do that. If that would have been the case, and I have a great deal of respect for the mayor, but if that would have been the case, and the people that know me, I would have told them then there's no reason to even have them there. That would just have been ridiculous. So absolutely false. Absolutely false.
You're watching.
Yes.
It's dark. 15 to 20 officers, mostly SWAT, inside. You're seeing the crowds grow.
Yes.
What are your moves here?
There's a, there's a couple of, again, there's events going on all over the city, but clearly at some point in time, that third precinct, it's the focal point. And as the crowds are amassing in the thousands, and simultaneously as structures to my right, left, and in front of me are being looted, burned to the ground, and going up. And now it seems as though, it was, the energy is focused on that building. Mm-hmm. And so I knew then that we had to get those remaining officers out of there. And that's when I made the call to Mayor Frey to say, Mayor, I'm requesting that you make a formal declaration to Governor Walz to bring in the National Guard. And I'm contacting my assistant chief up at the command post that we need an evac plan now to get those remaining officers out of there. Jana, my focus at that point is simple: no more funerals. I can't have any officers being killed in line of duty, and I can't have any civilians being killed with officers trying to hold a precinct. And so when a crisis is occurring, for those who've ever experienced and been in one, for me, the best way I can describe it is there's this crescendo that's building in your head, this noise, and you realize at some point you've only got a limited amount of time to act, or you're going to be swept in it. And so I contacted the assistant chief, and I said, I need an evac plan. And he's a good person, great leader. And he responded, yeah, chief, I'll get up something. I'll get back to you in about an hour. I said, no, assistant chief, they don't have an hour. We need one now. And so he knew the gravity and the seriousness at that point of what I was asking him to do. And the mayor's contacting the governor's office. And so we're just trying to get the officers out of there as safely as we possibly can, because I knew that time was not on our side. So,
were cops angry at you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And they can be. And you have to remember, when people are in the midst of a crisis, oftentimes, and it's normal, you're only going to see so far in front of you. Leading in a crisis, I have to see beyond that. And they can be angry, but I can only imagine what that anger would have been had we lost lives that night. So I believe that when things happen in your life and in others that have an impact, that are changing, it's important to make sure that you share those. I was very intent on making sure that no one else was going to tell my story. I was going to be the one to tell it.
Also, over the last 5 years, there's been a little bit of revisionist history, or telling the story a different way.
Yes.
I'm sure you've seen it.
Absolutely. And that is what we have to guard against. We cannot erase and revise history for our own feelings. We cannot do that. And history has shown that the more you attempt to try to do that, the more resistance there's going to be. And so while I didn't have those considerations 5 years ago as this was going on, that there would be this sort of movement to revise history and erase history. I think that my memoir is timely as a reminder that we have to speak the truth. You may not like it, but we have to speak the truth. And we owe that to future generations.
Does it anger you that there's revisionist history?
It doesn't anger me. I think what I'm probably more concerned about is that people who know the truth not speaking up. I think that is, you used the word, and I believe it's a word that no leader should ever fall into, is being indifferent. That is a poison when we become indifferent. And sadly, today, there are people that want to change history, that want to revise history, that want to erase history. And for a profession that I was so honored and proud to serve, we can't let that happen.
My final question is about your final chapter. It was a letter.
Yeah. So I didn't have an opportunity to meet little Gianna. And I can only imagine, as a father myself, to have my children have to see that video of their parents' last moments on this earth in such a public way as well. I didn't have an opportunity to tell her what I felt and that I was sorry. And so I needed to tell her that. I don't know if I'll ever meet her, but I want her to know how deeply sorry I am that her father's no longer here with us, and that as long as I'm alive, I will do all I can to provide a better future for our next generation.